On Joe Rogan's podcast, Dr. Peterson, who is not a climate scientist, claimed, "There's no such thing as climate." He was asked by Mr. Rogan to explain, so he launched into an obtuse theory. Climate and everything are the same word, and that's what bothers me about the climate change types. It's like, this is something that bothers me about it, technically. It's like climate is about everything, okay. But your models aren't based on everything. Your models are based on a set number of variables, he said. So that means you've reduced the variables, which are everything, to that set. Well, how did you decide which set of variables to include in the equation if it's about everything? Because your models do not and cannot model everything. What do you mean by everything? Rogan then asked. We have to change everything. The same with the word environment, Mr. Peterson continued. That word means so much that it actually doesn't mean anything. Like when you say everything, like in a sense that's meaningless. What's the difference between the environment and everything? There's no difference. Peterson then asked the question, so this is a crisis of everything? Before providing his own answer. It's like, no, it's not. Or if it is, if it really is, then we're done because we can't fix everything. At one point, the Mr. Rogan acknowledges that his guest went on these rants but continues the conversation on climate change. The episode meanders into a discussion on energy sources, where Peterson alleges, with zero factual basis, that more people die every year from solar energy than die from nuclear. Who dies from solar? Rogan asked. Guess how you die from solar? Dr. Peterson says, with a laugh. Sunburn? Rogan asks. No, you fall off the roof when you're installing it. Gravity, Peterson replied, describing it as a good example of unintended consequences. He also at one point claims that fracking has not polluted water supplies. The episode was lambasted by a number of climate experts and distinguished scientists. Dr. Michael Mann, professor of atmospheric science and director of Earth System Science Center at Penn State University and a National Academy of Sciences member, said he had listened to some of the podcast and that the bit that I heard made me dumber. As I understand Jordan Peterson's argument, it's the climate is complicated. It's got lots of components. So we can never model it or understand it. Dr. Mann wrote in an email. The argument betrays either a total lack of understanding of how science works, or, more likely, a total disdain for his audience and an intention to disinform. It could be used to dismiss physics, chemistry, biology, and every other field of science where one formulates, and rigorously tests, the part Peterson conveniently ignores, conceptual models that attempt to distill the key components of a particular system and the interactions between those components. Every great discovery in science, including the physics that allowed Peterson and Rogan to record and broadcast their ridiculous conversation, has arisen through that process. So Jordan and Rogan, who facilitates the spread of this misinformation by subjecting his viewers to this nonsense, has essentially dismissed the very notion of scientific discovery. Professor Mann added, this almost comedic type of nihilism would be funny if it weren't killing people. Peterson and Rogan's anti-scientific rhetoric about COVID almost certainly has and will continue to lead to large numbers of human deaths. Meanwhile, Dr. Sam Gregson, a University of Cambridge physicist who works on the Large Hadron Collider experiment at CERN in Switzerland, tweeted, Jordan Peterson explains why nothing can be modeled and physics doesn't exist. I'm going to need a new career. Amy Westervelt, an investigative journalist who runs Climate Change Podcast Drilled, also posted, I guess I know the answer to this, but why is anyone asking Jordan Peterson about climate change in the first place? This is WHY legit. Social scientists and psychologists WHO actually research climate need more attention and funding. JFC. The news site Media dubbed the interview wackadoo while author Daniel Pinchbeck noted, climate change is not hard to sort out. We put over 30 billion tons of CO2 into the air every year, causing a rise in CO2 and temperatures. Climate change is not synonymous with everything. This is